So this final backstay is B3 thread, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to estimate how much we need and then overestimate a little bit and cut that off. So this is the last rigging line we're putting on, so that's quite a nice feeling. I'm going to start by threading it through the eye. Just get your tweezers in and fish it out from the back. There we go. Come on. Oh, it's been difficult, this one. Okay, and we're gonna use the F17 thread for seizing this line. So we've got 2 seizings to do. To make that a bit easier for us to do, I'm just going to clamp the 2 lines together to form our little loop. Now we don't want the loop too tight because we want to be able to move it once we've tied it so that it's angled upwards. Pull that nice and tight, get that up to where we want it. So I'm leaving it about 1 millimetre away from being right up hard against where we want, and we can put a little bit of glue on that now. I'm just going to hold that so it doesn't glue to the ship here, and give us a little bit more space. Right, that should be all right now. So put a second seizing on, exactly the same. So I can trim that first knot up now. There we go, and we can trim the length of that. Okay, and you can see we can move that quite nicely. So should be able to trim this. There we go. Right, so now what we want to do is work at the top. So I'm going to reposition the camera. So once again, this is a little bit fiddly, but it is doable. As you get more and more lines on, you have to be much more conscious about how this line is passing so that it's not pressing against other lines and deforming them and the shape of them. So as you go up, make sure you're not snagging anything. And what we're going to do is make sure we've gone inside of this cable here. So I'm just going to pass that on the inside. Okay, so we're going to go around this bit here, so we need to thread it underneath the spar and above this line here. Oh. Making sure I'm not tangled. Now then we're going through the gap underneath the spar and over that cord, and then just help it sit where you want it to sit. There we go. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pass the end underneath the line that we're tying off, because if you tie it underneath, I can then pull that in and it'll help me position it where I want it. So it's going to go beneath that cable like so, and then we just move the crossover point up and that tightens it. Then making sure my cable is not lying over other cables, it's not snagged on anything. There we go. And that is where we will tie it. So that crossover point is where we're going to tie it. So to make sure that we keep that nice and tight, I'm going to clamp the two cables together. But before I do that, I want to just make sure that my tension is correct. So I'm just going to get this cable and pull it up and make sure that it has gone around and it's nice and tight. We don't want any slack in it. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to put a little clamp on there, clamp the two lines together like that. Right, okay, that'll just sit there nicely now. Now you can see it's a bit cramped for tying off, but we're gonna have a go anyway. So I'm using F17 again as the thread for this. So plenty of thread so I can sort of work on the outside of it. So I've made my loop. So I've made my loop and I'm just using my tweezers to grab the loop and then putting my tweezers through the loop, making sure it's this side of the line, on the inside of the line, so it's not snagging on anything. Grab it with my tweezers, pull it through, and then pull it tight, move it to the position we want, which is about there. Get that really, really tight. Glue it in. And other than trimming these lines up, we are then done with the rigging, which is a nice feeling because the only thing we've got left to do is anchors and a couple of doors. So that's that. You don't need to see me trim this up, so I will come back to you when we're doing doors or anchor, whichever one I do next. So we're back on page 38 of our build manual and we are on step 86. So I chose not to add these at the time in case they got knocked off during the rigging process. And actually what I've found is they probably would have been okay and I wouldn't have knocked them off. But I would advise you, if you're behind me at this point in the build, that where are we? Here, where they're asking you to put on all the swivel cannons, I'd leave those off till the very end, because the number of times I've knocked those doing the rigging you would not believe. So we're simply going to remove these. We've previously painted them. So we've got a 55 right there and a 54 right there. And then 55 and 54 left. There we go. Now, up to you what you do with these. If you've painted it red on the inside, you might want to paint these red on the inside as well. I'm just going to clean up the laser burn and just go around it and sand that off. And that will be enough for me. And then we'll glue those into place. You don't need to see me removing laser burn. You've seen me do it many times. So I'll just get on with doing that. And then I'll come back to you. Whilst I'm cleaning up the parts for the doors, we can also clean up the parts for the anchors, which is the last remaining assembly work we've got to do. So these come like so we just need to take them out, and these are broken free in their frame, but they have been handled quite a lot and moved around. So we just need to take all the laser burn off them. You will see as you look closely, there is little tiny cutout indentations. That's the locations for the black card that's going to be used as metal strips. So you don't want to sand those out. We want to just clean it up. And you can paint this black if you wish, or you can leave it the natural wood. It's up to you. There you go. So we can still see where those strips need to go. In fact, it's more clear now with that tidied up. Get rid of the witness of where the laser tab was, and then gently go around the curve at the end there. You may have to sand this again once you've glued the two halves together, but for now we'll get the laser burn off. So once the anchors are cleaned up, the stock at the top, you need to test fit it. I'm finding that it doesn't fit particularly well, that this is a bit shallow. The cutout for the anchor is a bit shallow and also slightly too narrow. So I'm using a little square file just to open this up, make it a touch wider and a bit deeper. So it's a matter of just taking a bit away from both of them so that it stays as central as possible, and then keep test fitting until you're happy that you can get both of the wooden parts to close without a gap. So you can see that's not quite, I'm not yet there, can't get those together particularly well, so I've still got some work to do, but I have done this one. And what you need to do is get it to a point that you can sandwich the anchor in between with no resistance, like so. And then we can glue that down and paint it up and what have you. So with all of that said, I'm going to carry on doing this off camera, getting this to fit, and then we'll glue the parts together. So the anchors, even though they're black, need to be painted. I'm using the matte metal black that we've used for other parts of this build. Probably going to need 2 coats to ensure that we get a nice even saturation of colour, and then when that is done we can put them in the wood stocks. So better to paint them first because it ensures that everything is nice and smart and you're not risking getting paint on your woodwork. So yeah, they should look really nice when painted up. They're very, very well done 3D prints. There we go. So we'll let that dry and then we'll give that a second coat before we put it into our wooden blocks. So we are now at the point where we are ready to start building up the final display base. And all throughout this build I've been wondering what I was going to do with this. There is some very fine writing on here, and I think what I want to try and do is put a little bit of paint into that, and then wipe it free, and hopefully that will mean that we've got some lettering that we can see. So I'm going to have a go, and if it doesn't turn out, we know it wasn't a good idea. First thing I need to do though is just sand smooth the edges. You can see the witness of the cutting process there. So just going to get myself a little sanding stick and smooth that up. So on all sides, even where you've not had the nubs, there we go. If your nubs are a little bit larger than a gentle sand, you can take them back with a needle file. And then tidy it up. And we could probably wash that and it'd be fine. So let's have a go. So I'm using an acrylic paint. The surface of this is really quite shiny. So I'm going to do one of these words. There we go. Just work the paint in. You can see that's already standing out really quite nicely, and then I can just take that paint off. Yeah, so if we do it fairly thin like a wash, give it a chance to soak in, we should, when it's semi-dry, be able to just wipe that away a bit. You have to work it in a little bit. Just to darken it up. There we go. So I think that looks pretty good for now. So we'll let that fully dry, and then we'll use a cloth rather than the paper that's a little bit abrasive and just polish that back a little bit. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, we can build the rest of the stand up now. So just cut the parts out. Don't know how many tabs we've got. I think I need a bigger knife. So using Stanley knife, we can remove the rest of these parts from the frame. Just find all the tabs and gently push them out. I'm interested to see how well this the hull sits on this, because stands are often a little bit of a challenge. And then these slot in to mount our plaque. Just have to be careful not to scratch your surface, because there's seems like there's backing on just one of the surfaces. I don't know, I can't remember if there was on both and I've taken one off. Maybe. I think it might have been protected on both and I've taken one off when we did the first impressions of it, possibly. Now I wouldn't chuck this away. You've got some good strips of clear material that can be used for all sorts of things. So I will cut it into little usable strips and probably keep this strip here, that strip, the strip at the back, and you never know when, you know, having a little bit of clear plastic could be helpful. But we'll talk more about that when we finish the build. So, sorry, I just bumped the camera. What I'm interested in is how good the fit is going to be of these parts. So, just going to take the nub down. Okay, that one's done, so let's get the backing tape off. Okay, and then that's our first piece ready. So let's clean this up. Ideally, I don't want to glue any of this. I want this to all fit in, have a really nice tight tolerance and not have to worry about gluing it. That's my ideal. Might be a bit slack. I'm going to build the whole thing up and see what I think. Yeah, and we also need to put paint in that other one. I'll do that as well. So the stand is a little loose and it does need gluing, so we'll use a bit of CA to do that. So I'm going to disassemble it and then we can carefully glue the bits in one at a time. So we'll leave that in, get my CA, should only take a moment. So medium CA, I just need to find what I've done with my, there it is, little applicator. So a little bit on either side of the opening there, and then at the bottom we'll slide that first piece in. Like so. That's nice and flat, and square is the other thing we need. There we go, that's square. And we can take that off. There we go. Again, just make sure it's all square, which it is, so that's all good. Right, then we can put the little mounting points for the sign on. What's that one? And that one, and then finally, so we put a little bit of glue in the openings at the top, you could use PVA for this if you wanted. There we go, and the way this works is you slot it in at the bottom and then push it in at the top. That side's gone in, there we go. Okay, and that actually looks really quite nice and classy when done. So I'll do the other side off camera and then we can place our model on it. So we have our little doors to put on, and wasn't really sure about the position of these, to be honest. Do we put them slightly on the inside of the hole, or do we try and put them either side of the outside of the hole, which is difficult because you've got to modify the hole to do that. So I'm gluing mine just on the inside. So a little bit of medium CA, just to give you the impression that they open and close really. Obviously we've got a bracket detail, you want that facing outwards so it's visible. And as I said, you could choose to paint the inside of this red, which I might have done on another kit, but on this beginner's build we are just doing the very basics. So there we go. Okay, that's our little doors on, which actually adds a nice little bit of animation to the model. So our anchor goes in the opposite direction to the stock. So your 2 points should be pointing outwards, not in that direction. That's wrong. You might draw an anchor like that, but anchors aren't like that at all. And as you look at this, you'll see you've got a flat edge and then an edge that's got like a taper on. The taper should be facing down as well. Your flat edge should be the top edge. Okay, so we're going to get this brought together now. So easiest way to do this, a little bit of medium CA where the stock of the anchor is going to go. Plop that in and glue that in first, because you can hold that into place, and there you go. You know that's in properly. If you just try and sandwich it together whilst wood gluing this together, you'll find it keeps moving. So you want that glued in. Now you could either do wood glue now and then put a couple of clamps on and hold it together, and that'd be perfectly fine. But because I've got CA glue out and to hand, I'm going to use CA for this job. But by all means use wood glue. So just going to plop it in, and we're going to put some glue on our part here. That should be plenty. And now what we need to do is just make sure everything's lined up as we press it together. There we go. So we want it as flat all round as we can get it, and level at the ends. There we go, that's one. That's two. And we'll just hold those like that for a minute. Now, whilst that glue is setting, the next job is to start cutting some of this card, which works remarkably well to look like iron strips. So the width of the strips we need is 1mm. So we're simply going to take our steel rule, make sure it's straight along the edge. You might need to cut a bit off to straighten it up first. I found I had to. And then using the tip of my knife, I'm just going to mark out where that 1mm is by cutting that last little bit up there. And then we'll do the same here as well. Cut a millimetre, and then I'm just going to score. Now you will need to cut 2 of these strips to do your anchor, and you'll need about 1.5 of them. There you go, that's your first one. So there you go, nice and straight. If you think where you've cut originally your 1mm that it's making it look a little untidy, cut that off. We've got plenty of material, tons of card here, and you need a fraction of it. There we go, so just tidied up those ends. So I know I've got perfectly good ends now. So yeah, I'm going to cut a second one off camera and then I'll come back to you. So the glue is dried on our anchor here, so I'm just going to go in and tidy that up now and make sure everything's nice and smooth and aligned. So I'm just taking a file and that's getting rid of any witness of the glue, and it's making sure that we don't have a step between the 2 parts. And then with a bit of emery paper, he says that, not being able to say, I've got some somewhere, I've just been using it. Ah, there we go, just found it. Just as I was about to switch the camera off, I found it. We can use that to round the edges off. And you know when you've got it all sorted and level because the colour sort of changes, goes a bit lighter, it evens out, and you know you're sort of there. There we go, that's good. And we can still see where we need to put our metal strips. So I'll do this other side off camera and then I'll come back to you. Okay, we're now ready with the wood part nicely cleaned up. We're now ready to start adding the metal, which is card. And for me, you're going to have a join somewhere, and for me the join needs to be underneath so that your sides and your top are all nicely wrapped. You are going to see underneath, but I think that's where they would naturally join it anyway. So I'm going to start by putting a little bit of glue. So again, this is medium CA that we're using here. We're just going to put a little bit on the first half here. So just put a little bit down on the wood. We'll be putting the glue onto the card for the rest of the way. It's just easier this way around. And the end of the card is going to go on our little join line. Just put up against that like so. And I'm just going to hold it there for a sec. I thought that would have grabbed quicker than it did. There we go. Just going to hold it there and let it grab. Okay, once it's grabbed, what we're going to do is put a little bit of glue actually on the card this time. It's a bit more controllable that way. So just a small amount on the card, and then push the card over so it's nice and tight, keeping it aligned and straight. We'll just hold that there for a sec till it grabs. I'm actually going to fold this over again whilst that glue is drying, and then we're ready for the next step, which is gluing around the top. So a little bit of glue on the card again. And pull that round over the top there. And hold that in. You get the idea. There's nothing complicated about this really. Just give it a moment to grab. There we go. And then when the glue is grabbed and we're happy that it's dried, we can trim this at the halfway point with a sharp knife, and that's it, job done really. So I do want to show you that, so we'll just give it a moment to dry. So I'll switch the camera off and come back to you in a mo. Right. Glue has dried, so you can feel with the knife. If you use the back of the knife, you can press it in so it butts up against the first piece we put down, and you can just cut it against that. Just rock your blade carefully on your join line. By using the join line as a start and end point, it's easy to see where you need to be cutting. There you go. And that looks remarkably convincing as an iron strap. We haven't painted it or anything. And then the last thing to do, if you've got any witness of glue, and I have a little bit, just go in and sand up to your edge and sand that glue back. There you go, like so. So you can see a little bit of glue on each edge there. Just sand that back very lightly. I'm not even pressing on with the sanding paper, I'm just sort of rubbing it over the top and just tidy that up. There you go. And that's how you put those on. So I've got another 3 to do. I'll do those off camera. The process is the same for all of them, and then we've got to install a little photo etched ring. So photo etched ring that goes into the top of our anchor here. I'm going to get rid of the mat, actually it'll help with the focus. I've removed it from the fret, and in this instance I've just painted it, but you better chemically blacken in it. I will touch it up after we've installed it. What we want to do is just pull it apart slightly so that we can plop it over the end of the anchor like that, and so it just plops into place. And then I'm just going to use a little bit of medium CA just to secure it into place. Now, personally, not a big fan of the photo etch because it's flattened, so you could use that as a template to make a ring out of wire, or you could wrap some thread around it which would make it more circular, and that would be correct because it should be puddinged really anyway, but or at least wrapped in rope. So but we'll do that on another build. That's not for absolute beginner's model. Now I have to be really careful with this because I've managed to snap the anchor in, and I've just glued it back together, so it's a little bit more fragile than it would normally be. So I managed to break it at the wood end while I was putting the cardboard on, so do be careful with it. Okay, the instructions for the anchor I'm going to read to you. It says the final jobs are to make the display stand, which we've already done, and then secure the anchor using 0.5 natural thread to both the timber head and cat head as shown. We hope you enjoyed building this kit. My problem is it doesn't really tell you how to go about doing that, so I'm going to show you. Now what we're doing here is not historically accurate. If you remember when we built this, I talked about, oh, we might want to be drilling through these. Really, there should be a block hanging off here and the anchors slung to a block and so on and so forth. So what we're doing is we're giving you something that visually looks correct whilst not being historically accurate of how you do it. There is a lot about this model that has been simplified to make it a beginner's model. So okay, there's no right or wrong way of attaching this anchor, so I'm just going to show you how I go about doing it. I'm going to start by putting a rope here and tying that on, and that's later going to go around our anchor, and then I'm going to put the anchor roughly in place like so, and I'm just going to put a little clip there to stop the anchor falling off. And now I'm going to tie that end so we're going to go through the eye of the ring there, make a loop, there we go, and hook that over the cat head. Okay, so now we've done that and we've got that roughly where we want it. I'm actually going to have it a little bit further up here, but I'm going to take this line and pass it back through the ring so that we can move the knot underneath. Like so. And then I'm going to tie a second knot and you'll notice that one is going around the ring. So we've got one, we're putting a second knot on that's just holding that all together like so, and then we can put a dab of medium CA on and glue that all into place. And then I'm just going to tuck it behind. So if I push this line through like so, that'll allow me to just tuck that knot underneath and it won't be as visible. There we go. Make sure it's all nice and tight. We'll give that a moment to dry. So this is still movable, right? And that's exactly how I want it. Now then, the two lines from our knot we can now wrap round, make another knot. Like so, and I want to close it over our cat head there, over our oh, what's it called? Doesn't matter. You know what I'm doing, you can see it. There we go. Come on. Pull that tight, and then one more knot at the front. Should lock all of that together. There we go. I can glue that. The hole looks pretty. So I should be able to trim this one now. Okay, I'm just going to shorten that just to get that out of my way. Right, so we've now got the anchor rope to do. This is the last thing that we need to do. So we're going to pass that through there we go, got it. That'd be easier to pass it through from the front. Yeah. Oh, very careful. And what we want is a little bit of hang, but not too much. This wouldn't have been dangling in the ocean. So for me, no, it needs to come through the back or it's not going to hang right. For me, it needs to be above the bottom of the whale, which, yeah, treat that as your waterline. So we're going to have to get this through the back. There we go. So we'll keep feeding it through until we've got a line that is sort of there. Now, next thing you want to do is just tighten up your rope and position it on your winch. Pull it through there and then just further adjust your line if that's what you need to do. And now we have to tie it together. Now for me, I'm using the F15 line, the 0.25 line for that. So I'm going to take a length and I'm going to form a loop. Pass the loop through the back. There we go. Now, we need to move that up as high as we can get before we pull it tight. There we go. Pull that nice and tight. Keep holding it. Get some glue on that knot straight away. There we go. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing again, another 3 times. So I want 4 lots of lashing. So I'm just going to shorten that now, just to keep it out of my way. And we can trim these now. The glue will be dried on these. There we go. So exactly the same process. Once you've got the first one on, the others become easier. Finding it a little bit more difficult because this is sort of a left-handed and I'm right-handed. There we go. So find your distance, tighten it up. Now the one downside with this type of knot, although it's easy as a slip knot to put on, is that the lines don't sit next to each other. And you get a little gap, you can just see that there. So the way to go around that is when we put our next binding on, it overlaps so that one's sitting in the gap and the next thread is sitting on the outside. So you'll see in a sec. So just shorten that a little bit. Right, I can trim this first one up. Like that. And then we get some more thread. we go. Now then, going to get this first thread lying across the middle of those like that. And as we tighten it up, push the threads together. There we go. Keep the pressure on. Just going to hold that one tight while the glue dries for a sec. So just putting this last one on, you can see how we've got the line. You can see better, I think. The line is between those two lines. We close that one up, tighten up our knot, make sure everything is nicely gathered together. A little bit of glue on the back where it's sort of out of sight, and then a little bit on the knot. I'll just hold that for a sec. So almost the last thing to do now, we're just going to cut the anchor cable, and we should be able to now cut those. Okay, so officially that's the last thing done. What I want you to do now is just go around and just make sure that there's no touch-up needed, and then your model is done. So I'm just going to do the same. I'm going to check for any touch-up required. So we are done, and we have quite a lot of leftovers, and this is great. This is the start of your shipwrights shop. You're about to go on a journey. You've completed your first model. But this is the very, very tip of an iceberg that you're going to enjoy for many, many years. And all of this stuff is going to become helpful to you in the future, because as you build more kits and you get more experience and you get more confidence, you then start making changes and doing some scratch building and making things look a little bit more the way you want them. So we've got all sorts of extras, from 2 additional guns, which can be very handy for making adding additional guns or replacing parts on kits that aren't as good as these, that sort of stuff. We've got wooden steps, we've got photo etched hinges, got cat heads and bits and pieces that are all usable. All these parts could be usable, especially when you're building another 1/64 scale. If you break a part or want to replace a part that's not as good looking, so we keep all of those. Same with these. It's always handy to keep the extra nails, especially when you're doing bigger models. It gives you a little bit more flexibility, so you might as well build up your stash of nails, and over time you'll find you get quite a few of those. Even the empty bags, because they're great for keeping little things in, because for example, we've now got bits of wires that we made for doing the spacing of dead eyes. So when you build your next 1/64 scale, you can use those. So you might as well put them in a bag, keep them, mark them up as dead eye spacers, and you may find that you can use them again. So again, it's all starting to build up the tools of your new hobby. We have leftover strips of wood. Always good to keep those for all sorts of things, from looking at how things are going to behave under a stain, to just having spares for making shims, for scratch building items. The same is true of offcuts. Good offcuts of wood you should keep, again for trialing stains and paints and what have you, but also for making replacement parts. If you damage parts, you can then cut them out of your spare wood. The same with dowels. You never know when a little bit of dowel might be handy to make something that you're scratch building. The offcuts, the smaller offcuts, I'll go through these and I'll keep the best. Things like this will chuck, no need keeping that, but some of these good strips we'll keep and store those as well. We've also got lots of blocks, spare blocks left over. I'm going to mark up the labels with the sizes so I know exactly what they are and that they're 1/64 scale. But these are all really handy for improving not just your other wooden kits that you might build from different brands, but also your plastic tall ships. We have our threads, and again I'm going to mark these up with the sizes. We'll just write on with a Sharpie pen what they are. That's actually not from the kit, but yeah, we will use these, and because we know what the sizes are, I might use these ones first in the next build and use them up before I start the next one, so you'll over time build up a nice collection of spools of thread. And it also means that you can replace these good threads in kits that don't supply good threads. We've made jigs, so for painting the dead eyes, you might as well keep that to be used again. And we've made a jig for making blocks, and you might want to improve on it in the fullness of time, but right now keep it, use it in the future. Black card, you can use it for so many things. It's great for hinges and that sort of stuff, adding little metal details, so keep that, that's very reusable. Photo etch, we didn't really use these rigging hooks, so we've got those for future use. We've got all sorts of dead eyes, Bailey pins. All of these are spares, which if you build another Vanguard kit, you'll probably find they'll be the same design and the same size, so they're usable, interchangeable. If you want to change how you do your rigging, you can do it. It's a good idea to cut all these off now, clean them up, chemically blacken them, and these are ready to go, so you can use them straight away when you do your rigging. So I will keep all of that. I will probably chemically black everything and clean them all up, and then put them in the little bags so they're ready to go. And finally, even acetate, which you know, some of it we'll chuck away, but we'll keep some of the big clear areas, because you never know when you want to do a little window, or make something like a telescope and turn it on your lathe and have it have a nice glass end, and then you paint the rest of it. So many things you could do with this, really is, from cutting out a circle so you've got what looks like a pail of liquid in a bucket. I mean, there's just so many things. So keep any nice decent virgin strips of it, get rid of your lumpy chunky stuff that you don't need, and this is the start of your spares and your stash of scratch building parts. And like I say, it's the start of your journey into being a model shipwright, and you'll be surprised over time how this stuff all starts to build up. So for example, when we were just doing the anchors, rather than using the photo etch rings, I could have used these rings here from a stash, which on a future build, if I was building it for myself and not as a beginner's build straight out of the box, is exactly what I would have done. So let's sum up what were my final thoughts of this build, and then we can start thinking about the next one. So here we are at the end of the journey of our first wooden model ship build. If you've been building along, and there's lots of people that have bought into this kit and have been building their first ever wooden model ship along with these videos, then first thing I'd like to say is a massive thank you for getting involved, trying something new. I know that you're going to be loving it. I've seen a number of people's builds of this, and they're all doing a tremendous job. And if you follow the videos, follow the instructions, you really can't go wrong. So we have finished this, and in the very first build we've ever done, what I've tried to do is show you how to build it with basic techniques, basic tools, straight out of the box, using what's been supplied in the box largely, and it's been about how to get from opening the box to putting the box in the bin because you're done. That's been the process. So we've taken you through lots and lots of basics, and my view is that this kit has got the best instructions I've ever used for building a model. The plans have been the clearest. I'm not saying that they're perfect. I'm not saying the instructions are perfect, because they're not. Nothing's ever perfect, is it? There's always something you'd like to see or have done differently. But these are really comprehensive, good quality instructions, so you'll have no worries following them and being able to build the model. For me, as this is a complete novice kit, one or two things I'd like to have seen in the instructions, like there was no real references to what thread sizes to use for tying blocks and that sort of stuff. You know, those little things for absolute beginners are really, really helpful, because everything is a question. And as someone who has been building models for a long time and has got experience, I know how extremely difficult it is to put your head back to being a beginner. And I build models like this one and plastic ones with a thought process of this is for a beginner, and it is very, very, very difficult to do. So anyway, I have taken you through very basic techniques for this. We have another 3 builds to do in our Absolute Beginner series, and we'll be building on those in the future and showing you some more things, different approaches to tackling the same job, how to improve what we've been doing here, you know, that sort of thing, improving the finish. But we'll talk more about that in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed this build. I hope you're enjoying your builds. You can ask me questions. Members, though, you can share your builds in the social group, and you can get help directly from me and other members around your build. So if you are a first-time builder, then I do strongly recommend membership. It will be really helpful for you as you go through your journey. And we're building a little community of people who really enjoy building models, whether they be plastic or wooden. I think this is a lovely looking model. It has a really nice combination of simplification for the beginner, a nice level of detail, and really good accuracy. It's all really well balanced, and you come out with something that you quite rightly should be really proud of. The manufacturer, Vanguard Models, has put the effort in to make sure it's as easy as possible for you to build. There is always going to be bits that you find challenging, especially as a new builder. What I would say is just take your time. It's not a race. Be patient, get your head around what you need to be doing, do it slowly, check, and then check again. Right, so I have taken you through the first build. You are there, you have completed this now, and you're ready for the next build. And the next build will be just a little bit different. So until I see you in the next build or the next episode from Model Kit Stuff, a massive thank you for joining me. I will see you very soon. You enjoy your builds, and I look forward to seeing them in the showcase later on this year. Bye for now.